Just really quickly to give you guys background on me, I'm an open book. I grew up in Chester Lee, so I grew up in Toronto housing. I have been bullied by police. I've been arrested by the same division I work for. I've been jumped coming into my own neighborhood because they think I'm from an enemy gang. I've had to move out when I was 17. There was a whole bunch of different aspects in regards to where I'm at right now. And we're talking about stakeholders, and this is where the whole safety planning comes in. Now, for me to decide to be a police officer, I really needed a lot of those stakeholders to kind of come up front and take me under their wing. So my whole thing and why I became a police officer is if I want to see a difference, I need to be the difference. And that is just a fact. So we have this thing about you do this and you do that and you're doing that and you shouldn't be doing that, and we're always pointing the finger to somebody else. If you're going to point the finger, go in front of the mirror and point the finger, because it's very easy for us to say that someone else is doing something or not doing something, but what are you doing? That's just a fact, right?
One at other people, you've got three pointing back at you.
100%, right? So if you're going to call somebody out, and this is just in general in life and in human nature, you got to make sure that you are doing something about that as well. So I didn't even know I did that. Did I do that? Okay. So also my background before coming into policing is severe youth mental health. That's what I work with. I worked at the Griffin Center. I've worked with CAMH. I've worked with clients and individuals that were youth that could not be socialized, that were in the middle of nowhere because they could not be socialized because their behaviors were so severe. Now, the interesting thing about that, and I'm going to use this example and then bring it to a greater scale in community, is when these kids were institutionalized, they had all these resources. Everybody wanted to help. I was always a part of a wraparound meeting where you'd have like social workers, you would have teachers, you would have sometimes police officers, sometimes you'd have guardians, you name it. Anyone who was a stakeholder in this child's life or this youth's life was there at this table. And the whole fact and the whole point of that wraparound meeting was for everybody at the table to figure out how they can be a positive resource for this young person and how that person can also feel safe. But the sad thing is it takes the situation to get grave, and it takes a situation to get severe before people start coming to the table, right? And so I've seen it all. I have been that child, that youth at risk. We talk about gang risk factors. I had 17 or 18 of them. I could have easily went another way if it wasn't for other stakeholders in my life. And unfortunately, those weren't my family, right? So this is why, especially nowadays, when we talk about stakeholders, that is every single person that is involved in someone's life. So here you have the wraparound meeting. But here we have youth that we already know are youth at risk, right? We see the signs. You see youth that, and if you really think about it, a lot of you see a lot of disturbing things nowadays with social media, in their neighborhoods, a lot more things than we saw. They're exposed to so much. But we dismiss it sometimes. Whoops. See, I did that on purpose. That's crazy. All right. We dismiss that sometimes because we think that's just normal teenage behavior, when it possibly could be even signs of PTSD. They look a lot the same. Just something to think about. So when you think your kid is just being a kid, you need to kind of figure out if that's just it. And that takes work. You can't say, I'm going to ask later when I have some time. Hell, we all have phones, right? You can text your child and say, hey, are you good today? It's just these little small, simple things that we need to keep in consideration because our youth go through a lot. So now, with communication, with our stakeholders, if it wasn't for individuals like coaches, teachers, some police officers, community members who didn't see me doing something different, then I don't know if I would be here today. Now, what those stakeholders do is they change an individual's algorithm. Because you think about it, when you live in a certain situation and you're viewed as a certain person and you hear all these different things of how people think you are, you just assume how the outcome is going to be. That's your algorithm. No matter what happens, if this happens, this is going to happen. So with our stakeholders, like I said, our teachers, anyone who has a stakeholder in our child's life, if they show something different with that communication, that will also change our child's algorithm. Does that make sense? And it takes work, right? It takes a lot of work to change this child's algorithm. Now, the interesting thing with that too, and I'm thinking about policing, is we always say, oh, well, the community doesn't accept us and so on and so forth, so if they don't accept us, we're just going to back off. But the interesting thing about these stakeholders and everything that's in common is that these stakeholders seek us out. They seek us out. They don't wait for that child to come to them. They go to that child. Just like as police officers, we go into the neighborhood and we try to develop that relationship. We have to do that. We cannot wait for the community to do that for us. We have to go there and do it, period. And I know Matt agrees, 100%. That is on us, right? Because we're stakeholders in the community as well. So we have to, if we want to see a difference, we got to be that difference, and it's all through communication. So with that wraparound meeting that one individual had who's already at their worst, we have to have that wraparound meeting. We have to have that communication. We go into schools and we have to arrest a kid at 12 who was bullying because he just assaulted someone, but this has been going on for 4 or 5 years. But no one wants to get police involved because they think police are going to come and just arrest this kid. No. If we know that this stuff is going on before this child reaches this state, we have a background. We have historical stuff saying we understand and we can see the risk factors that this child has gone through to why they're here now. But that happens through communication. That comes with trust. It's everyone trusting everybody else that that individual in that person's life is in it for the right reasons. But you won't know that until we start communicating. Now, as we're communicating, that's great and all, but we also have to make sure that we have consistency, right? You can communicate. I can go up and see a kid and take a picture with a selfie and be like, what's up? And then that kid feels really good in that moment, then I'm gone. That's not consistency, right? Now, with the whole discipline thing, I can hit my child and say, I don't like what you did, but if I also don't tell them what I liked, that's inconsistency. So this child only knows about the things that they do wrong. So if you're going to discipline your kid and tell them what they did wrong, you better damn well tell them what they did right, because they are doing stuff right. There has to be that balance. There has to be that consistency of communication. But that's all of us to do. Are you guys following me so far? And all this is coming from me being a police officer, me being a youth worker with mental health, and from the stuff that I went through in my own family as well, right? Now, all this stuff, let me see if I get this right, leads to success. Because when a child knows that they have a positive base, where they know that if they mess up, people aren't going to judge them, and you praise them for things that should be praised for, and there's that consistency through that communication from everybody, they're going to have a stronger chance to succeed. Period. I don't care who you are. I don't care what your situation is. If everyone is working together to make sure that youth is okay, that youth is more times than not going to be okay. Now, I know we're talking about safety plan, and this is what I want to talk to you, why it's called the safety plan. All of these things, you got to think about it. As teachers, do you want your students to be safe? 100%. As parents, do we want our kids to feel safe? Of course we do. But when kids feel safe and they feel supported, they will succeed because they have that base. So think about it. The safety comes from those interactions, those touches. We talked about love languages. I think there's 5 different love languages. It's knowing which one your child needs and knowing which ones you need, right? But all that comes with that consistency and that communication, which will lead to success because those young individuals feel safe, not just in home, but at their school. If not in their school, in their community center, because they have youth outreach workers and youth workers that care for them as well. There is a whole bunch of people that can make a difference in these youth lives. But you can't do it by yourself. Every single person is needed, and everybody has a part. And before you damn well point a finger, you better make sure you're doing something yourself. Absolutely. So that's what I'm saying. So that's the stakeholders. When I'm thinking stakeholders, it's people who have that child's best interests. Stakeholders aren't those gang members, but you have to remember, these gang members know exactly what is missing in these child's life. They know, and they use manipulation. They get those kids thinking that they're a stakeholder because everything you feel you don't have, I can give you. So that sense of family that they do not have, they feel that they're going to get that with a gang. They don't call the gang a gang. They call gang family, right? So they decided that I don't like my family, I like this family more because of the things that they get. That's a fact. And trust me, I've been around enough gang members and I grew up around enough gang members to know they don't use the word gang. They use family. So if you want someone else to be your kid's family, that's on you and everybody else. So that's why we all have to work together. And I don't know much about that, but I do know with multiple cultures and multiple neighborhoods that a religious base is a strong base. How it works and how it doesn't work, unfortunately, I don't know. But that is definitely something that, like, if you want to tap into a community at its heart and soul, that's something that you should use 100%. Why it works and why it doesn't, I honestly don't know. But it's definitely that's another stakeholder. Right? That's and that's a generational stakeholder because you have generations that are different generations going to this consistently, right? So they have those role models moving up. So that's really good. I didn't know that, but now I have to find out more about that because that's very interesting. So in regards to that, I've talked to, even with 6-year-olds, and this is me personally, and I'm sure Matt's the same way because like we're doppelgangers. You can tell we look a lot alike. We talk to 6-year-olds. We talk about stuff that they're seeing already. Because everyone gets so nervous about talking to 6-year-olds about things that they've already seen. Like they already know. The problem is that they don't understand, right? So you try to explain things a certain way that a 6-year-old would understand. But I know that crossing the street really isn't the biggest issue in your life right now. So but that's some. You can talk from that experience. I can tell you other officers do not, right? But if we're talking about that, and we're not, say an officer isn't really hitting that chord and getting their point across, that's when we have to have the other stakeholders come up and help. So when someone is not doing something or is unable to for whatever reason, like a parent can't do it all by him or herself, that's when the stakeholders have to say, you know what, I got you. Okay, all right, you know what, I see that you're working 3 jobs. I see you want to be there for for your kids. And this whole giving your kids shoes or Nikes, no, sometimes you just want to give them food. And you want to give them some kind of clothes, right? But to do that, you need to be away from them. So you think, like, what do I do, right? So when parents can't do that, they need to depend on those stakeholders. So that's what I'm saying. Like, when you recognize that certain things aren't a certain way, what are you going to do about that? Yeah, and that's all the stuff that's needed, right? So that's, once again, if we're able to, we want to. Like, when we go into schools, we have to articulate why we're even in there. Right? It's really sad because people keep showing that they want officers in there. And we're like, well, maybe I'll meet you at your house. Right? Because we have to articulate to higher ups and whatever why we're in that school. We're always constantly explaining ourselves, right? Even though we are looking at it as we want to be a positive resource. Even as a positive resource, we are constantly explaining ourselves because of who we are. Well, it's interesting enough. I know Ron has gotten so many, I guess, emails and contacts with private sector people who are just like, listen, we want to help. Like, how do we help?
Give them a job.
Yeah, there's you know what I mean? Like, there's so many different ways that we can help. It's just people feel so disconnected from everything. People who want to help don't know how they can help. Absolutely. And so we put it out there, and we just hope that we get. But our thing is, we work with what we got here. So in here, to me, this is everyone saying they want to be a leader. Somebody here wants a part in the solution, because why else would you be here? You could be doing something else, right? So anyone who's here is showing that they are invested in being a stakeholder however they possibly can. I'll do you one better. Who should lead that? Who should lead that? Yeah.
I have no idea.
But that's a good idea though, right? That's a good idea, right? Our whole thing about this and being neighborhood officers is our whole goal is to empower communities to do exactly that. Why can't I, as a community leader, talk to someone else who's a community leader and figure out how we can change things that are problems in our own neighborhood? The whole idea about this is empowerment. Like if you guys are not empowerment, like if you guys are not empowered and don't feel good about where you're at and what you can possibly do to change things, then what's the point of us being here, right? We need to empower you. So we're a resource to you to help you get empowered.